Imagine the water supply collapses, not for hours, not for days, but for weeks. The pipes stay dry, the stores are empty, and the only thing standing between you and real danger is what you've stored in your basement. Sound extreme? Then remember the R Valley disaster, the drought summers of recent years, and the reports of crumbling infrastructure in German cities. Water is life, and yet very few people have a plan for when the tap suddenly stops running. Today I'm going to show you a system that engineers have known for centuries, that costs almost nothing, and that gives you water security without you having to constantly think about it. A self-filling water system for 12 euro. This isn't science fiction. It's applied physics that our ancestors perfected, and that is more relevant today than ever before. Before we dive deeper, I want to ask you for a favor. If you want to live a self-determined life, if you're looking for security for your family, and if you don't want to be dependent on systems that can fail at any moment, then subscribe to this channel now. Hit the bell so you don't miss any information that could be crucial for you. And give this video a thumbs up if you think more people should know about solutions like this. Stay until the end, because that's where I'll put everything together and show you why exactly this system can make all the difference in an uncertain world. Let's start with an uncomfortable truth. We live in a time when we believe we have everything under control. We turn on a tap, and water always flows reliably. We've forgotten that this is a privilege, not a given. Our grandparents still knew this. They had wells, cisterns, rain barrels. They had systems that worked even when the central supply failed. Today, we are completely dependent. A power outage, a pipe burst, an extreme weather event, and we're left standing there empty-handed. The question isn't whether such a situation will occur. The question is when it will occur and whether you are prepared for it. The system we're talking about today is based on a principle that is as old as civilization itself, but has been almost forgotten by modern humans. It's called passive water management. This means you use natural processes to collect, store, and automatically refill water without having to constantly intervene. Without pumps, without electricity, without complicated technology, just simple physical laws that always work, no matter what happens. Engineers in ancient Rome used this to supply entire cities. Desert peoples survived in the most inhospitable regions using it, and you can use the same principle to secure yourself and your family. Now, you might think this sounds complicated, but it isn't. On the contrary, the best systems are the simplest because they have the fewest parts that can break. What you're going to build consists of 4 basic components that together create an intelligent, self-regulating system. None of these components cost much money. You can find most of them at a hardware store or even used, but the value they bring you is priceless. We're talking about real independence here. The security of knowing you always have access to clean water, no matter what's happening outside. Before we get into the practical implementation, let me show you the big picture. Water isn't just a resource, it's the foundation of everything. Your body is more than 60% water. You can survive for weeks without food, but only days without water. And it's not just about survival, it's about hygiene, cooking, gardening, and all the things that make for a dignified human life. The people who understood how to master water were always the ones who survived and prospered. From the Nabateans in Petra, who built a thriving city in the middle of the desert, to the rice terraces in Southeast Asia, which have functioned for millennia through ingenious irrigation systems. The knowledge is there. We just have to rediscover it and adapt it to our modern situation. What makes a system self-filling? That is the heart of the whole thing, and this is where it gets exciting. A self-filling system uses natural water sources that are constantly available, even if you can't see them. The most obvious source is rain, but even in dry times, there is water in the air in the form of humidity, dew, and condensation. The art is to capture, channel, and store this water without you having to do anything active. The system works for you, day and night, summer and winter. It is passive but highly effective. Imagine a funnel, a large funnel that catches every drop of rainwater that falls on a certain area. This funnel channels the water into a container, not just any way, but in a way that filters the water, keeping dirt out and maintaining water quality. And this container is connected to a second container through a simple physical principle called communicating vessels. When the first container is full, the water automatically flows into the second. When you take water from the second, it automatically refills from the first as long as there is still water there. That's the basis. Simple, robust, timeless. Now let's go into detail. This is crucial because the difference between a theoretical idea and a system that actually works lies in the precision of the implementation. I'll now show you step by step how to build this system, what materials you need, what to look out for, and what mistakes to avoid. Remember this well because this is where the wheat is separated from the chaff. Many start with big plans and fail at the small details. You won't do that because after this video, you'll know exactly what to do. The first pillar is the collection area. This is the surface that catches the rain. In most cases, this is your roof. An average single-family home in Germany has a roof area of about 100 micrometers. With an average rainfall of 700 liters per square meter per year, that means 70,000 liters of water potentially falling on your roof. 70,000 liters for free from the sky. Most people just let this water run into the sewer. You will use it, but you don't need an entire roof to start. Even a small area, a garden shed, a carport, a porch roof, is enough for the beginning. It's important that the surface is clean, that no toxic materials are involved, and that you have a way to divert the water. The rain gutter is your ally. It's already there to channel water off the roof. You just have to redirect it. Instead of sending the water into the sewer, you channel it into your collection container. This can be done with a simple rainwater collector that you can buy for 5 to 10 euro at the hardware store. It's a small device that you install into the downspout. It has a flap that opens when water comes and directs the water into a hose leading to your container. When the container is full, the flap closes automatically and the water flows on into the sewer. It's ingeniously simple and works absolutely reliably. Now comes the filter. Very few people remember this, but it is absolutely critical. The water coming off your roof isn't clean. It contains leaves, twigs, bird droppings, dust, and pollen. If you let that into your container unfiltered, you'll soon have a stinking brew you can't use. The filter must sit directly at the entrance of the collection container. You don't need an expensive high-tech filter. A simple sieve will do. Take a fine mesh stainless steel sieve, like the kind you use for cooking, or a piece of window screening from the hardware store. Stretch it over the opening of your container, or build a small filter chamber out of an old bucket. The water runs through the sieve. The coarse particles get caught, and the clean water flows into the container. Clean the sieve once a month, and you're done. That's all. Now to the heart of the system, the storage container. You have many options here. The cheapest is a used IBC container. These are the large plastic containers you often see on construction sites or in agriculture. They hold 1,000 liters and often cost between 30 and 50 euro used. You can get them on online classifieds or at recycling centers. Make sure they didn't previously contain toxic substances. Containers approved for food are best, recognizable by a small symbol. If you can't find an IBC or have less space, several smaller rain barrels that you can get for 10 to 20 euro will also do. The principle is the same. It's important that the container is stable, protected from direct sunlight to prevent algae growth, and has a lid so no dirt falls in and no mosquitoes can breed. The position of the container is more important than you might think. You want it as close as possible to your downspout, so you need less hose. But even more important is the height. If your container is elevated, on a pedestal or on concrete blocks, you automatically have water pressure. Every meter of height gives you about 0.1 bar of pressure. That sounds like little, but it's more than enough to channel water through a hose, fill a watering can, or feed a second system. If your container is 1 meter above the ground, you have enough pressure to work without problems. That's physics working for you, without a pump, without electricity. Now the communicating vessels come into play. This is the self-filling element. You connect your main container to a second, smaller container that you place where you actually use the water. In the garden, in a greenhouse, next to the patio. The connection consists of a simple hose that you connect to the bottom of the main container and lead to the second container. It's important that both containers have an overflow valve at the same height level. This causes the water to automatically adjust to the same level. When you take water from the second container, the level drops. Water immediately flows from the main container until both are at the same height again, without you having to do anything. No technology, just gravity and physics. Let me show you how powerful this is. Imagine you have a garden. You need water regularly for watering. Instead of walking to the main container every time, you have a small container, maybe 100 liters, directly in the garden that refills automatically. You just open the tap, fill your watering can, and the system regulates itself. You don't have to plan, you don't have to think about it, you don't have to refill. The system does it for you. And when a longer rain comes, the main container refills and the cycle begins again. That is true independence. That is a system that works for you while you sleep. Stay tuned, because now it gets really important. We've talked about collection, filtering, and storage, but a truly robust system needs even more. It needs redundancy, overflow protection, and the ability to function even in extreme situations. Because a system that only runs under perfect conditions is not a real security system. You want a system that runs even if it doesn't rain for weeks, if it freezes, or if unexpected problems arise. Let's start with the overflow. When your container is full and it keeps raining, the water has to go somewhere. If you don't manage this, the container will overflow, water will pool around it, and you'll have a moisture problem. The solution is an overflow pipe. This is a simple pipe that you install just below the upper rim of the container. When the water reaches this level, it flows out through the pipe, away from the container, into the garden, into a drainage ditch, or, if necessary, into the sewer. The pipe should have a larger diameter than your inlet hose so it doesn't get clogged during heavy rain. This is a safety feature that protects you from problems and shows you when your container is full. Redundancy means not putting all your eggs in one basket. One container is good, two are better, three are optimal. You can connect several containers in series so that the first overflows into the second into the third. This increases your storage capacity without needing giant, expensive tanks. And you have a backup. If one container has a leak or needs to be cleaned, you still have the others. In crisis preparation, redundancy is everything. A system without a backup is a weak system. Now for winter proofing. In Germany, we have frost. Water expands when it freezes. If your container is full to the brim and freezes completely, it can burst. The solution is simple. Always leave some air in the container during winter. Fill it to a maximum of 90%. This gives the ice room to expand. Even better is to insulate the container. A simple wrapping of old blankets, styrofoam boards, or bubble wrap can make the difference between a frozen block and usable water. And if you live in a particularly cold region, consider placing one of your containers in the basement or a sheltered area. It's warmer there, and you'll have access to liquid water even in the dead of winter. Another important point is the quality of the stored water over a long time. Stagnant water can turn, algae can grow, bacteria can multiply. The solution lies in three principles. First, no light. Light promotes algae growth. Your container should be opaque or at least covered. Second, no organic material. The filter at the entrance is a first line of defense, but check regularly to make sure no leaves or insects have gotten into the water. Third, movement or aeration. Water that moves stays fresh longer than stagnant water. If you occasionally take out some water and it refills through rain, you have a natural circulation. If you don't use any water for months, which is rare, you can give it a quick stir or drain some and replace it with fresh water. For those who want to go a step further, there's a simple method to make water permanently stable. A few drops of untreated silver water, as has been used for water preservation for centuries, or a copper coin in the container can inhibit bacterial growth. Copper has natural antibacterial properties. Our ancestors used copper vessels for water, not because they looked pretty, but because they worked. A simple copper disc from the hardware store placed in the water provides additional protection. Now let's talk about expansions. The basic system I showed you really only costs about 12 euros if you use used materials and shop cleverly. A rainwater collector for the downspout costs 5 euro. A sieve costs 2 euro. A few meters of hose costs 3 euro. Small parts cost 2 euro. If you get a container for free or find an old one, you're at this price. But of course, you can invest and expand the system. A second large container, a small hand pump for emergencies, a simple sand gravel filter for even better water quality, a float switch that shows you when the container is empty. All of these are options, not necessities. The system works even in the absolute basic version. Let me now show you how to use this system not only to store water, but also to secure food. Water and gardening go together. With a self-filling irrigation system, you can run a garden that feeds you without you constantly carrying a watering can. Imagine you have raised beds. You lay a simple drip irrigation system with perforated hoses that you can get for a few euros at the hardware store. You connect these hoses to your secondary water container, which refills automatically. Once set up, your garden essentially waters itself. You only check occasionally and enjoy the harvest. This is the future of self-sufficiency. Systems that work intelligently and take the heavy work off your hands. Many underestimate how much quality of life such a system brings. It's not just about crisis and emergencies, it's about everyday life. Imagine never having to pay expensive fresh water fees for your garden again. You no longer have to lug heavy cans around in the heat. You don't have to worry about whether the plants will die of thirst if you're away for a weekend. The system takes care of it. You gain time, you save money, and you have the security that even in times of drought, when other gardens dry up, yours will stay green. And it goes even further. Think about hygiene. If the water supply fails, flushing the toilet is a problem. It sounds trivial, but it's one of the first points that become critical in crises. With your water system, you have gray water available. The water from your rainwater tank may not be drinking water quality, but it's clean enough for toilets, for cleaning, and for laundry and emergencies. You aren't dependent on the piping network. This gives you an independence that most people don't even consider until it's too late. Now comes a point I don't want to withhold from you because it makes the system even more powerful: condensation. Even when it doesn't rain, there is water in the air. At night, when it cools down, this moisture condenses. You can use this effect to get additional water. This is especially valuable in dry periods. A simple condensation trap consists of a tarp or foil stretched slightly diagonally over the ground. At night, the surface cools down, dew forms, and the water runs along the slope into a collection container. This doesn't bring much, maybe half a liter to a liter per night, but in a real emergency, it can be crucial, and it shows you that water is everywhere if you know how to collect it. Another old technique is the use of fog. In coastal regions or areas with morning fog, you can obtain water using simple fog nets. These are nets made of fine fabric that catch fog droplets and channel them into a container. This technique has been used for decades in desert regions in Chile and Peru, supplying entire villages with water. In Germany, fog isn't as frequent, but in some regions, especially in valleys or near bodies of water, it can be a supplement. The point is that you learn to use water from all available sources, not just rain. Now back to the core and the synthesis of all these elements. You have a system that uses multiple sources, mainly rain, supplemented by condensation, and perhaps fog. You have a large storage capacity, ideally several containers with several thousand liters. You have a self-filling distribution system that brings water to where you need it. You have filters and protection mechanisms that ensure quality. And you have redundancy so that the failure of one component doesn't paralyze the whole system. That is a complete autonomous water management system that offers maximum security with minimal costs. Now let's talk about the psychological dimension. This is just as important as the technical side. When you have a system like this, it changes your perception. You no longer go through the day with that dull feeling that you are vulnerable, that a system failure could leave you helpless. You know you have water, you have a reserve, you have a plan. This gives you inner peace, it gives you self-confidence. And in a crisis, your mental state is just as important as your physical preparation. Fear paralyzes, preparation frees. I've spoken with many people who have set up such systems. Again and again, I hear the same thing. In the beginning, it was a rational decision, a precaution, but then it became more. It became a lifestyle, an awareness of resources, an appreciation for what nature provides. When you see your container filling after every rain, when you water your garden with this water and harvest vegetables, when you realize that you are less dependent on external systems, something happens inside you. You feel more connected to what really matters. You realize that security doesn't mean someone else is taking care of you, but that you can take care of yourself. The irony is that our society is becoming more complex, more networked, more dependent on technology and infrastructure. And at the same time, it is becoming more fragile. A cyber attack on a power plant, a natural disaster, a pandemic, a logistical collapse. The systems we rely on have long chains of dependencies, and every chain is only as strong as its weakest link. The people who understand this are not the pessimists. They are the realists, and they build their own systems, their own chains, which are short and robust. What I showed you today is more than a water system. It is a philosophy, the philosophy of decentralized resilience. Instead of relying on a large central system that supplies everyone, you build your own small system that supplies you. Instead of hoping that everything always works, you prepare for the fact that sometimes it doesn't. Instead of passively consuming, you actively become a producer of your own security. This is a mindset that can be applied to all areas: energy, food, security, community. Everywhere you can build systems that work for you, instead of waiting for someone to take care of you. Let me give you some concrete numbers so you understand the dimension. The average German uses about 120 liters of water per day, most of it for flushing toilets, showering, laundry. Only a small part for drinking and cooking. If you reduce your consumption in a crisis situation, you can get by with 20 to 30 liters per day. 10 liters for drinking and cooking, 10 to 20 liters for hygiene. A 1,000-liter container gives you over 30 days of security at this rate of consumption. For a family of 4, that's about 7 to 8 days. If you have 3 such containers, that's 3 weeks to a month. This is a realistic buffer that would get you through most crises. And remember that your system refills during this time as soon as it rains. In the German average, it rains about every 3rd day. Even in a longer dry period, rain eventually comes. Your system is not static, it is dynamic. It is constantly collecting more. That is the big difference between a passive supply that eventually runs out and an active system that regenerates. Now, I want to be honest with you. This system doesn't solve all problems. It doesn't give you drinking water of the highest quality without further treatment. Rainwater is relatively clean, but not sterile. For drinking purposes, you should boil it or run it through an additional filter. There are simple ceramic filters or activated carbon filters that you can get for 20 to 50 euro, and which remove bacteria and pollutants. Or you can simply boil the water for 5 minutes and you'll be on the safe side. This isn't rocket science. The system also doesn't protect you from an eternal drought. If it doesn't rain for months, a container will eventually be empty. But how likely is that in Germany? We live in a temperate climate zone with regular precipitation. Even in the driest years of the last decades, there were regular rainfalls. The system is designed for realistic scenarios, not for Hollywood apocalypses. And even if there were an extreme drought, you would still have more options with your system than your neighbors without one. The point is that perfection is the enemy of the good. Many people do nothing because they believe they have to build the perfect system that is armed for every conceivable situation. That's unrealistic and paralyzes you. Start small, build a basic system, learn how to use it, expand it step by step. Every improvement you make, every additional container you connect, every technique you add makes you a bit more resilient. But even the smallest system is better than none at all. I want to tell you about an experiment I did myself. A few years ago, I decided to live for 1 month exclusively on collected rainwater. No tap water for anything except drinking water, and even that I minimize. I wanted to know how realistic it is to live with such a system and what the challenges are. At the time, I had 3 IBC containers, a total of 3,000 liters. The month was July, one of the driest times. In the first 2 weeks, there wasn't a single rain. I documented my consumption. Showering with 5 liters, flushing the toilet with 2 liters per flush, dishes with 3 liters, garden with 20 liters. In total, I came to about 50 liters per day. After 2 weeks, I had used 700 liters, so I still had well over half of my reserve. Then came a thunderstorm, and overnight the containers refilled by 500 liters. At the end of the month, I still had over 2,000 liters. The realization was clear. It works. It's not just theory. It's practice that works when you take it seriously. The most important thing I learned was appreciation. When you see every liter of water you use, when you know it doesn't just come out of the tap but has been collected, stored, and cared for, then you treat it differently. You don't waste. You use it consciously. You recognize the true value of a resource we normally take for granted. This is a lesson that goes beyond water systems. It is a lesson about responsibility, about awareness, about respect for what keeps us alive. Now let's talk about the costs in the bigger picture. 12 € for a basic system. Let's say you invest 200 € for a really solid setup with several containers, good filters, and all the extras. What do you get for that? You get security for decades. These systems last 20, 30 years if you maintain them. You get independence from rising water prices. You get the opportunity to run a garden that provides you with food. You get peace of mind. What is that worth to you? People spend more money on insurance they may never use. Here you are building something you can use every day, and that can save your life in an emergency. And there's another financial aspect that is often overlooked. If you water your garden with rainwater, you save on tap water. Depending on the region and consumption, that can be 100 to 200 € per year. So your system has paid for itself in 1 to 2 years, even if you invested 200 €. From then on, every liter of water you use is free. Over 20 years, that's savings of several thousand euros. This is not only ecologically sensible, it is also economically wise. Now I want to talk about community. When you have a system like this, you are not only a resource for yourself, but potentially for others too. In a crisis, if the water supply fails, your neighbors will have a problem. You have a solution. This gives you not only security, but also a position. You can help. You can share. You can show how it's done. This makes you valuable in a community. At the same time, you should be careful. Don't tell everyone what you have. In real emergencies, people can become desperate. But with the right people, with family, with close friends, you can share your knowledge and perhaps build larger systems together. Imagine a neighborhood where several households have such systems. They are connected, not necessarily physically, but in terms of knowledge. Everyone takes care of their part, but everyone knows the others are prepared too. That is real resilience on a community level. It is the opposite of prepper cliches, where everyone sits in their bunker waiting for the apocalypse. It is active, positive preparation that improves life, whether a crisis comes or not. I also want to talk about the ecological dimension, because that is important to me. When you use rainwater, you relieve the municipal systems. The water you catch doesn't have to be funneled into the sewer, treated, and reprocessed. This saves energy, reduces the load on sewage treatment plants, and conserves water resources. At the same time, during heavy rain, you prevent too much water from flowing into the sewer system at once, which can lead to flooding. Your system is a buffer. It buffers for you, and it buffers for the environment. This is sustainable action in the best sense. And there is a symbolic meaning. Every time you use a liter of water from your system, it is a quiet act of rebellion against total dependency. You choose to act yourself instead of just consuming. You take your destiny into your own hands, at least in this small but fundamental area. That may sound exaggerated, but I believe it is important. We live in a time when we do less and less ourselves and outsource more and more to companies, to service providers, to the state. Every piece of autonomy we regain is valuable. Now we come to the practical implementation. Once more, step by step, so you can actually do it. Step 1, analyze your situation. How much roof area do you have? How much space for containers? How much water do you realistically need? Write it down, make a plan. Step 2, get the materials. Look for used IBC containers on classified ads. Go to the hardware store for rainwater collectors, hoses, sieves. Budget 50 to 200 €, depending on how big you want to start. Step 3, install the rainwater collector on the downspout. It takes 10 minutes and only needs a screwdriver. Step 4, set up the container, ideally elevated, stable, protected from the sun. Step 5, connect the collector and container with a hose. Install the sieve at the entrance of the container. Step 6, install an overflow pipe and, if desired, a drain tap at the bottom. Step 7, wait for the next rain and observe how the system works. Step 8, expand, optimize, learn. That's all. It sounds simple because it is simple. The complexity doesn't come from the technology, but from the understanding of the principles. And you have those now. You understand how water is collected, stored, and distributed. You understand gravity, overflow, filtering, communicating vessels. You understand what to watch out for and where the pitfalls lie. With this knowledge, you can not only build your own system, but adapt it to your specific situation, solve problems that arise, and improve the system over time. In this video, I deliberately didn't use any fancy animations or complicated diagrams. I wanted you to focus on the essentials, the ideas, the principles, the implementation. If you've followed the video this far, you've learned more than most people will ever learn about water security. You are now in a position to take action. The question is, will you do it? Here is the truth that no one likes to hear. Knowledge without action is worthless. You can watch 100 videos, read 1,000 articles, but if you don't take the first step, if you don't start, you are no better off than before. The difference between people who are prepared and people who are not is not knowledge. It is the decision to act. It is the will to not rely on others, but to take responsibility yourself. I know the excuses. I don't have time. I don't have money. I don't know where to start. I don't have space. I can't do it. All lies we tell ourselves to justify inactivity. You have time for 3 hours of television in the evening, but not for 1 hour to improve your security. You have money for the latest streaming service, but not 12 € for a water system. You now know exactly where to start because I've shown you. You need less space than for 2 trash cans, and you can do it because it's simpler than you think. The point is that preparation is not a sprint. It is a marathon. You don't have to do everything at once. You don't have to have the perfect system tomorrow, but you have to start. Today, this week, get the first container, install the rainwater collector, take the first step, and then the next, and then the next. In a year, you will look back and be amazed at how far you've come, and you will be grateful that you started when you saw this video. Let me tell you a story in closing, a true story. In the summer of 2023, there were problems with the water supply in several regions of Germany. Heat wave, drought, old infrastructure. In some communities, the water was turned off for hours at a time. In others, there were boil water orders because quality could no longer be guaranteed. Most people were unprepared. They stood there helpless, buying water bottles in a panic that were sold out within hours. There were arguments in supermarkets. There was fear. But there were also people who were prepared. They had their systems, they had their supplies, and they didn't have to worry. They mastered the situation calmly while chaos reigned around them. This is not fear-mongering. This is reality. This happened, and it will happen again. The question isn't whether, but when the next crisis will come. A power outage, a heat wave, a system failure, a pandemic, an economic collapse. We live in unstable times. The system on which our civilization rests is fragile. That doesn't mean it has to collapse, but it means you shouldn't assume it will never collapse. The smart people are those who hope for the best and prepare for the worst. Your water system is an insurance policy that you can use every day. That is the difference from other preparations that are only relevant in an emergency. A candle for a power outage lies in the closet and waits. A food supply lies in the basement and waits. But your water system, you use that. You water your garden with it, you wash your car with it, you fill your kiddie pool with it. It is not passive, it is active, and at the same time, it is ready for the moment you really need it. Now let's talk about how you can make this system even smarter, because the basic system is only the beginning. The more you understand, the more possibilities you see. One of the most elegant expansions is a multi-layer filter. You probably know the principle from nature. When water seeps through different layers of soil, it is purified. Sand filters particles, activated carbon binds pollutants, gravel provides structure and flow. You can replicate this, and it will cost you less than 20 €. Take an old bucket, at least 10 liters. Drill holes in the bottom, about 5 to 10 small holes. This will be your filter. Now you layer from bottom to top. First, a layer of coarse gravel, about 5 centimeters. This prevents the finer layers from slipping through the holes. Over that comes fine gravel, another 5 mm, then a thick layer of sand, at least 10 mm. Best is washed quartz sand from the hardware store. And at the very top, if you want to make it perfect, a layer of activated carbon, 3 to 5 centimeters. You can get this from aquarium supplies or online. This activated carbon significantly removes organic compounds and improves the taste and smell of the water. You place this bucket over your water container or in the inlet. The water drips through the layers and is cleaned mechanically and chemically in the process. The flow is slow, but that is intended. Slow filtering is effective filtering. Such a filter can clean several thousand liters of water before you have to replace the layers. And that too is simple. You take out the layers, wash the sand, replace the activated carbon, and layer everything again. Once a year, you don't need more than that. Now let's talk about scaling. Maybe you think one IBC container with 1,000 liters isn't enough. Maybe you have a large family, a large garden, or you just want maximum security. The solution is simple. You scale horizontally. You don't set up one giant tank, but several medium ones. 3 IBC containers give you 3,000 liters. 5 give you 5,000. You can place them side by side or, if you have space, in a row. You connect them with simple hoses at the bottom. The water automatically distributes evenly across all containers. This is the principle of connected vessels, and it works perfectly. The advantage of this method is not only the capacity, it is also the flexibility. If one container has a problem, you can disconnect it from the system without stopping everything. You can clean individual containers while the others keep running. You can expand your system step by step whenever you find a new container or can afford one. You are not bound to a rigid structure. Your system grows with your needs and possibilities. There is also vertical scaling. If you stack the containers on top of each other, you use the height for additional pressure. The upper container feeds the lower one, and the pressure at the outlet of the lower container is higher than if it were standing on the ground alone. But here you have to be careful. IBC containers are stable, but they are not designed for the weight of a second full container on top of them. You need a solid frame, ideally made of metal, that is specifically designed for this. Such frames are available for purchase, or if you are handy, you can build one yourself. But don't underestimate the weight. 1,000 liters of water weigh 1,000 kilograms. That's 1 ton plus the weight of the container itself. Your foundation and your construction must be able to support that safely. Let me tell you about a man I met 2 years ago. He lives in Brandenburg on an old farm. He made his entire water management autonomous, not just for the garden and emergencies, but for everything. His house is completely disconnected from the water grid. He collects rainwater, uses his own well as a backup, and has a sophisticated filter system that brings the water to drinking water quality. His investment was about 5,000 euros spread over 3 years. Sounds like a lot. His annual water costs before were over 800 euro. The system paid for itself in 6 years. After that, his water is free. But the most important thing, he told me, is not the money. It is the freedom. The freedom not to be dependent on a pipe. The freedom to have his own water that no one can turn off. The freedom to know that he and his family are always supplied. This is an extreme example, of course. You don't have to go that far. But it shows what is possible. It shows that autonomous water management is not a fantasy, but a lived reality. And it begins with exactly the system I showed you today. Starting small, learning, expanding. That is the way. Now I want to talk about maintenance, because a system is only as good as its care. The good news is that maintenance is minimal if you've set up the system correctly. But there are a few routines you should stick to. Once a month, you should check and clean your filter at the entrance. That takes 5 minutes. You take out the sieve, rinse it off, put it back in, done. Twice a year, once in the spring and once in the fall, you should inspect your containers. Look for cracks, for leaks, for discoloration. Open the lid and look inside. Are there deposits? Does it smell funny? Normally not, but if so, you know you have to act. Once a year, ideally in the spring, you should completely empty and clean one container. You don't have to do this for all of them at once. Do one per year, then you have a rotation cycle. The water you drain is not wasted. Use it for the garden, for cleaning paths, for whatever. Then you rinse the container with clear water. If necessary, go in with a soft brush and remove deposits. No chemicals, no cleaning agents, just water and mechanical cleaning. Then you refill it and it's good for another year. You should also check the hoses and connections. Are they tight? Have they become porous? UV radiation and temperature fluctuations can make rubber and plastic brittle over the years. A new hose costs €2. Replace it before it bursts. That is prevention. That is how you keep systems running. Small measures prevent big problems. In winter, as I mentioned, you have to watch out for frost. But let me be more specific. If temperatures drop below zero for an extended period, you should empty or insulate hoses that are outside. Water in a hose freezes faster than in a large container. A frozen hose can burst. Insulation is easy. Foam pipes from the hardware store cost a few euros and can save a hose through the winter. Or you lay the hoses so they can be drained, with a slight slope so the water flows out when you open a tap. For the containers themselves, if you don't empty them completely, which I don't recommend because you'd then be without water in the spring, then insulate them. A cover made of old blankets that you fix with wire or tension belts can raise the temperature inside by several degrees. That can be the difference between liquid and frozen. And even if the top few centimeters freeze, that's not a problem as long as there is still liquid water below the ice layer. Now for an advanced technique for those who really want to dive deep, gray water recycling. Gray water is the water from the shower, sink, dishwasher. It's not as heavily soiled as black water from the toilet, but it's not clean enough for direct reuse either. But with simple filtering, you can use it for the toilet or the garden. Imagine you take a shower. The water doesn't just run away, it's channeled into a separate tank. There it runs through a simple filter, maybe through your multi-layer filter made of sand and gravel. The purified gray water can then be used for flushing the toilet. This significantly reduces your fresh water consumption. This is its own system, but it complements your rainwater system perfectly. You use every water source optimally. In countries with water shortages, this is standard. In Australia, in Israel, in many parts of the USA, gray water systems are normal. In Germany, we aren't that far yet because we believe water is available in unlimited quantities. But that's changing. If you think ahead now, you're ahead of the curve. You don't have to implement everything at once, but knowing the possibility and understanding the principle is valuable. If gray water recycling becomes necessary one day, you already know how to do it. Another aspect I haven't treated deeply yet is quality control. How do you know if your water is good? For most applications, it's enough if the water is clear, doesn't smell, and has no visible particles. But if you want to drink it, you should be sure. There are simple water test kits you can buy online for 10 to 20 euro. They test for the most common contaminants like bacteria, pH value, and nitrates. Such a test once a year gives you peace of mind. If the water is fine, perfect. If not, you know you have to act. The greatest danger to stored water is bacteria. But bacteria need three things to grow: heat, nutrients, and time. If you eliminate two of these factors, you have the problem under control. Cold storage is ideal. A container in the shade or partially buried stays cooler. No nutrients means you keep organic material out. Your filter does that. And time. If you use your water regularly and it refills through rain, you have circulation and the water doesn't stand for months. These three simple principles keep your water fresh. If you want to be absolutely sure, and this is especially important if you want to drink the water, there are two final steps. First, boil it. 5 minutes at a rolling boil kills all bacteria, viruses, and parasites. This is universal, proven, and safe. Second, UV disinfection. There are small battery-operated UV pens that you can get for 30 to 50 euro. You hold them in the water, press a button, and after 60 seconds, the water is disinfected. UV light destroys the DNA of microorganisms. No chemicals, no taste, just clean water. For long-term storage of drinking water, there is also an old method: silver. Not the cutlery, but colloidal silver or simply a clean silver coin. Silver ions have an antibacterial effect. Our great-grandparents put silver coins in their water pitchers. This is not esotericism, it is chemistry. Studies have shown that silver actually inhibits the growth of bacteria. A coin made of 900 silver, which you can get at a coin shop, placed in the water can significantly extend its shelf life. Is it necessary? No, not if you use the other methods. Is it an additional safeguard? Yes. Now I want to talk about scenarios, different situations in which your system becomes critical. Scenario 1, power outage. The pumps at the waterworks fail, the pipes run empty. You no longer have pressure at the tap. Most people face the problem that they can't even flush the toilet. Not you. You go to your container, open the tap, and you have water. You can drink, cook, wash, flush the toilet. You are independent. That alone is priceless. Scenario 2, contamination. An accident, a chemical spill, a leaky pipe, and suddenly the tap water is contaminated. The authorities issue a boil water order or even a ban on use. What do most people do? Panic. They buy water bottles that aren't there. You have your own water that is not affected by such an incident. Rainwater is not part of the municipal system. It is an independent source. Scenario 3, drought. The summer is hot. It doesn't rain for weeks. The municipalities impose water usage bans. No watering the garden, no filling pools, only absolutely necessary consumption. Your neighbors watch as their gardens wither. Not you. You have your reserve. You collected when it was still raining. And when your container runs low, you are at least better off than those who have nothing. And the next rain always comes eventually. Scenario 4, long-term crisis, economic collapse, system failure, whatever. The infrastructure collapses or only works to a limited extent. Water is rationed, expensive, or unsafe. In such a situation, your system becomes not only useful, but vital. It gives you a resource that others don't have. It gives you freedom of action. You can make decisions that others cannot make because you have a basic supply. I'm not painting disaster fantasies on the wall here. I'm showing you realistic scenarios that have all actually occurred in the recent past in Germany or other developed countries. Power outages have happened, contaminations have happened, droughts have happened, and larger crises, even if not to this extent here, are happening worldwide all the time. The question isn't whether something like this can happen. The question is, are you ready when it happens? Your water system is an insurance policy that you can use every day. That is the difference from other preparations that are only relevant in an emergency. A candle for a power outage lies in the closet and waits. A food supply lies in the basement and waits. But your water system, you use that. You water your garden with it, you wash your car with it, you fill your kiddie pool with it. It is not passive, it is active, and at the same time, it is ready for the moment you really need it. Let's talk now about mental preparation, because it is just as important. Many people build systems and then don't have the discipline or the awareness to use them properly. They have 1,000 liters of water stored, but in an emergency, they don't know how to ration it, how to divide it, how to handle it. That is a mistake. You have to practice, not theoretically, but practically. Once a year, do a weekend without tap water. Turn off the water and live only from your system. You will immediately notice where the weak points are, where you still need to improve, how much water you really need, and how best to distribute it. That is training. That is preparation that counts. And you also train your family. When everyone knows where the water is, how the system works, and what to do in an emergency, then you are prepared as a unit. This is not prepper madness. It is sensible household management. Everyone should know where the main water valve is, where the fuses are, where the emergency water is. These are basics that were once self-evident and are forgotten today. Finally, to conclude, I have shown you more in this video than most people will ever know about water. I have explained the physics, shown the practice, and conveyed the philosophy. You have the knowledge. You have the tools. The only question left is, will you implement it? I hope so. I hope you are among the people who do not just consume, but act. Who do not just see problems, but build solutions. Who do not wait until it is too late, but think ahead and are prepared. Your first water system is the beginning of a journey to self-determination, to independence, to security. It will not be the last measure you take, but it will be one of the most important. Water is life, and whoever controls their water controls their life. In this sense, build your system, learn, expand. Share your knowledge and become the person who is prepared when others are not. The world needs more people like you. People who take responsibility, who think ahead, who act. Be one of them. Thank you for being part of this until the end. Now it's up to you. If this story has changed your view of the resources in your garden, then subscribe to this channel and follow us. We dig up the history they tried to bury. Let's plant the future. The next treasure will be revealed soon.